In progress.
Okay, welcome everybody to the May 1st Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee meeting. When I was in 6th grade, we did a little, like a fake newscast that they let us do over the PA system in school, and I said, it was on May 1st, and I said, welcome to the merry month of May. And it was a big hit, so I wanted to say it today. Welcome to the merry month of May. 50 years in, a reunion. Okay. Changes to the agenda. We do have a few revised resolutions. They should be on your desks. For those that are on Zoom, I'll make sure when we get to them, you know what the revisions are. They're not, I wouldn't call them substantive. They're just to make us correct, make us legal. And let's see, those are all the changes to the agenda, I think. Yep. Okay. So how about the minutes approval from our April 3rd meeting? Deborah moves, Susan seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Next up is contracting updates. Is that from our staff or from MRB Group? Who's giving us that?
I'll get started.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, good morning.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody. So we've continued to work on getting contracts established. We have, at this point, it looks like 46 executed contracts. And then I just sent one over last week, I think. Oh, actually, I did not. Just kidding. So we have 46 executed contract from the original 53 projects. And then another 3 have submitted some form of documentation, and we're just waiting for them to round out. We'll talk a little bit more about the timing of the contracts on a later agenda item, but we do want to make sure that we start kind of moving these contracts forward and getting them executed so that projects can start. But that's where we are right now. But everybody has a contract. Everything is drafted at this point. So that's really good. We've made good progress.
Excellent. Thank you, Tracy. Any questions or comments for Tracy? All right. Excellent. Next up, report and vouchering update. Who's giving us?
Okay.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I guess I'll take that one. So today, at the end of the first quarter, we received 10 payment requests. Of those 10, 2 of them were for final request. 5 of them were for first quarter expenses, and then 2 of them were advance payments. Out of those 10, we've approved 9. We're still working on 1 more of the first quarter request payments. So to date, we've approved $132,586 in payments. Add the correct documentation information to recommend to the county for payment. So those are with Samantha or have been cut already and sent out. And then we're working on the last one right now with one of the awardees to get some additional information. So.
Well, thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments for Scott?
Yeah, I'm curious to know how forthcoming the awardees have been, how cooperative they've been. Have you had any problems, or is everybody doing what they're supposed to do with a smile on their face?
No, I think everybody's been very good to work with. When I have reached out and requested additional information and supporting documents, they've been quick to get them to us or call and ask to make sure they're providing us the right information. They've been really good about it. Some of the ones that haven't submitted yet that are preparing to in the next quarter have called in advance and asked questions about what they'd like to see for documentation and how they need to track some of it. So it's been very good. The only issue we've really ran into is a couple of them have been dropping off their information without attention to Samantha or anybody else. So it's kind of got lost in the mix in your administration office or your county office. So I've reached out to them and asked them to try their best to scan everything in and submit it to me direct. And if they have to drop it off, to please drop it off at the administrative office to Samantha's attention, so it don't slow things down in the past. One of the files, got kicked around for 10, 12 days before it made it to Samantha's desk because it wasn't addressed to anybody. So that was really the only issue we've had so far, and then just, making sure we have the right supporting documents for the county.
Thank you. It's good to hear.
Thank you.
Yep.
Randy?
Yes, thank you. Do we know how many vouchers we've paid out so far, dollar amounts?
Scott, do you have that?
Yeah. What I've recommended for payment is $132,586. Not sure. A couple of them were just the end of last week, so they might not have been cut yet, but I think Samantha has gotten quite a few of the checks out.
Total so far? Okay,
$132,586 and 58 cents.
thank you.
Good. So, I mean, it seems to me that everything's going along smoothly, and it's the actual implementation of the programs and the requests for reimbursement is just starting. It's like the very beginning. Any other thoughts on this topic before we move on? Scott, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is environmental reviews for Community Recovery Fund applications report discussion. I don't know, Joan, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yes, sure. I just provided some background information in the agenda package that you were aware that one of the projects that's under, I guess I'll call it active consideration, would require the legislature to make environmental determinations. I guess I'm prepared to answer questions, or when this project is discussed, to answer questions. Not sure how you want to deal with that, Dan.
That's good, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Joan or anything else about the environmental review aspect of this rollout?
So who's the lead agency? Are we the lead agency on Cuba International, or is it the town?
It would, for this environmental review, it's the county legislature. This is not a coordinated review. There would be two
Separate ones?
Separate ones, although I imagine the town would do what we do as often when the municipality is taking action, is start with theirs and see if there's any areas that we would want to provide additional information on.
Thank you.
But, yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be a little more to say about the Cuba International application, specifically when we get to that resolution. Anything in general about any of the other environmental review process? Okay, thank you, Joan.
Great, thank you.
And then next up is the proposed Community Recovery Fund awards report discussion, which will lead right into the resolution. So to summarize, we took the list of, I'll call them finalists from the last round that we did in December. We went through a process where every legislator was entitled to add one extra application to the list, and I think 10 of us did that. That resulted in 35 applications, am I right? And then we went through a voting process where each legislator distributed the $510,000 as they would like to see it. Our consultants took all that information and merged it all and generated this spreadsheet, which we have in front of us today, and that we'll be voting on shortly. So that's the process in a nutshell. That process resulted in 14 applications that were recommended for funding, and that's where we stand at this moment. So anybody in the room or on screen want to add to that? Okay, good. Then I think we should probably just move into the resolution itself, which is Resolution Community Recovery Fund Program Awards, ID 11655. Does anybody want to move that? Deborah moves. Travis seconds. Discussion. Randy.
I just want to think how the process worked out. It seems like it worked fairly quickly, and it was good to see a wide range of programs funded as well as numerous rural areas, and so I think it worked out.
Thank you, Randy. I'm glad to hear that. I agree. It seems like people are more content with the process this time than last time. Deborah?
Yeah, I think that this process has been as democratic, small d, as we could make it, and I have no interest in trying to make changes or adjustments because this is the collective will of 14 of us.
Good. Other questions or comments? Mike Lane?
I came today, Dan, because I wanted to hear if there were any questions about the Dryden dollars that were in this resolution. I know Greg has provided some additional information. Dan, you had sent out about the Dryden request for an earmark for the broadband project, but that's up in the air as to whether or not they're going to get it. And meanwhile, Dryden is proceeding to do its own broadband project, and it's reached out intermunicipally with Caroline to try to expand it even more. So we appreciate the fact that they are on the list and they do need this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike's referencing an email I sent over the weekend when I found out that two of the projects that are on our list had requested congressionally directed spending, I think that's what they call it these days, and that two of the projects on our list had advanced in that process. So both Dryden Fiber and Ithaca Reuse, is that what it's called? Tompkins Reuse. So I just made everyone aware of that, but I don't have any proposals to change anything. It doesn't sound like anybody else does. Great. Okay, any more discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor of the resolution? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Next up
Dan,
is... Yes.
did you move the amended version? Was that considered friendly?
Thank you, Katrina. That was the amended version. If there's any...
Very friendly.
I should have...
Thank you.
Thank you. I promised I would tell the people on the screen what that was before we voted, so I'm sorry about that. The changes had to do with the seeker actions list at the end of the resolution, where a bunch of them said not subject to seeker. That's not quite right. They were type 2-2 and type 3-31, 2-31. There's some specific seeker types that they were subject to, and so that just got corrected. So if anybody needs me to expand on that, I can. Like I said, I don't believe these are substantive.
These were Joan's corrections.
Yes.
She's the expert, so.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you.
All right, then. So that was what was passed. Next up is appropriating funds from the Community Recovery Program for Cuba International Uhuru Creek Farm. Does somebody want to move that? Randy moves, Travis seconds.
I have a question.
Discussion, yeah.
Do we have to pass the seeker resolution before we pass the substantive resolution? Joan probably knows that for sure.
Yes, before taking action on something that's subject to seeker, you need to consider the environmental impacts first. So you would need to vote on the
Resolution 8.
negative declaration prior to, or at least the legislature would. But it's just been our habit to also have committee take that action in that same order of the negative declaration prior to the resolution.
Thank you. How about we withdraw that motion?
Well, can't we just postpone it?
We can.
So
Either
I'm
one.
going to move to postpone.
Katrina, do you have a preference what we do?
I'm fine either way.
Okay, motion, go ahead.
I move to postpone it so we can do the neg deck.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, you would table it because you're going to take it up later in the meeting.
Oh, we can never keep those straight.
Okay, motion to table.
Yes.
Second, okay. Any discussion about the motion to table?
Second, I was, okay,
Travis did?
thank you, Travis.
Let us have a vote on the motion to table. All in favor of motion to table? That is unanimous. The motion has been tabled. We are now moving on to the resolution about making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to resolution appropriating funds from the Community Recovery Program for Cuba International, ID 11647, and we're moving the revised version, which I will tell you about in just a moment. Somebody want to move that? Travis moves. Deborah seconds. Thank you. The revised version adds a whereas. Again, these are not substantive, I would say. So, what's that?
The revised version
Oh.
was the tabled version. There was no revision on this one.
No revision on this part. Thank you, thank you. Lots of moving parts. All right, so this is on the table. Just questions, comments, discussion? I'm going to, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I guess I did have a question. We seem to think, the county seekers seem to think that there wasn't a problem with the wetlands and the intermittent streams. Although the email that Dan shared with us from Leslie Connors, is she on the planning board in the town?
Danby Town Board.
Right. Her email seemed to suggest that the Danby Town Board had more problems with the environmental impacts than our seeker, and I guess I just wanted to highlight that. It's a little bit confusing to me.
Let me say a few words about this if I can.
Jen's got her hand up too, so she can probably, yeah.
Oh, Joan, go ahead.
I think it would be misleading to characterize the draft material I prepared as not caring about the streams or the wetlands. In fact, the proposed negative declaration and the seeker information propose measures to mitigate potential impacts on those resources. This is not normally a neg deck resolution that you're used to seeing just says there's no environmental impact, and we have identified potential environmental impacts, and then hence the recommendation for mitigation measures to avoid those impacts, specifically to make sure no buildings are built within 100 feet of perennial streams or within 50 feet of intermittent streams, to not have any buildings on existing wetlands, and to establish vegetative buffers when stream crossings are put in place, if they are.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jen. I wasn't
Thank you.
suggesting you didn't do your job or you didn't care. It was just, there seemed to.
Well, a one-sentence summary for the public, I just wanted to make people aware that that was not at least our department's position. You are free to take what action you want.
Okay, thank you.
Let me try to set a little more context for this, too. So I heard from a Danby Town Board member just a few days ago, so this is pretty new, raising some concerns about this site, and I'll tell you more about that in just a second. But it's not the Danby Town Board talking. They did not take official action. This is one Danby Town Board member. And then she followed up with me just last night that she shared her material with the other Danby Town Board members, and there's another one named Catherine Hunter, another Danby Town Board member, who asked to sign on to her statements. In other words, we have two Danby Town Board members who, this is their view, but again, that's just two individuals, it's not the full board. And I'm going to send the email to Katrina to get into the record. She also sent me last night an updated version, and really it's just a proofread version is what she said, so I don't think it's substantively different. I'm happy to read the whole thing right now if anybody wants. I don't think it needs to be, but let me just give you a sample of what we're talking about here. This is her first paragraph. The Uhuru Creek Farm proposal is a grand endeavor. We need more of that, and such efforts should be supported. The proposal in the identified location does not conform to the recently completed rezoning process to which the town residents and staff committed significant effort. So she's not talking about the substance of the proposal, she's talking about the location. And then I also want to just direct you to what it says in the memo that Joan generated, which is that this proposal, in order for this to actually happen in the town of Danby, it would require, quote, the creation of a planned development district, other zoning amendment, or a required variance by the appropriate authorities in the town of Danby. So it seems pretty clear that this doesn't fit with the town of Danby zoning, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. They'll just need to go through a different process, and that may or may not be anything we need to think about at all, but I just wanted to make sure everyone has all the information. So, with that slightly confused explanation, are there any questions or comments? Veronica.
Yeah, I have a question about the email, and I do apologize. I was only reading it
It came in very late.
this morning.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're saying that the Uhuru Creek Farm plan has basically too many dwellings on it for the location that it is, and that it has the density of what would go in the hamlet. I admit I'm not familiar with Danby
That's right.
hamlet plans. And they suggest trying to have Danby help find an alternative site. I'm curious, but it's supposed to have multiple dwellings, and also it's supposed to be farming, with land for farming. Maybe the unstated thing is here is they would like it to not be in Danby, but just out of curiosity, does the Danby zoning allow for any location that this project would conform to the zoning, or is it simply not the type of thing that is allowed?
I'm not.
And I know you might not know.
I can't answer that, yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't know enough. Deborah?
Yeah, this is another situation like the one we had with Second Wind in Newfield, where, we can dispense money for projects we think are desirable, but ultimately, there's home rule and planning, land use regulatory authority that we have no control over. So I guess reluctantly, I'll vote for this. And I say reluctantly because I just hope we're not getting into another situation where we go another 2 or 3 months down the road and find out that something we wanted to fund can't be built, and then we're back with another pile of money to distribute.
Randy.
Yeah, I read the email, and it was quite lengthy and had a lot of information in it. I guess I'm in agreement with Deb. But it's going to be ultimately up to Danby if they approve it or not. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. So I'll chime in. I agree with both of you as well. I'm ready to vote for this, and it'll have to just go through the Danby planning process, and that's out of our control anyway. And if they don't want it or they can't make it fit, then that's their business, I guess. I didn't mean that to be so harsh. Any other questions or comments or debate or discussion? All right then. So we have moved the negative determination of environmental significance, and we're ready to vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And then that does bring us to the last resolution for the day, which is actually appropriating the money for this project. So appropriating funds from the Community Recovery Program for Cuba International Uhuru Creek Farm. And
we'd be moving the revised one.
That's
Or
right.
it's already moved. We're just moving
It's on the
to-
table.
We need to move to
Oh.
bring it off the table, yeah.
failed my Robert's Rules test today.
Amanda would be proud of you.
Thank you, Travis. Is your second? Deborah? Okay, any discussion about the resolution to move it off the table, the motion to move it off the table? Okay, all in favor? The motion is back on the table. Is that right?
Amanda would be so proud.
Yes.
You would.
Okay, so it's back on the table. Let me tell you the little addition that's been added. A whereas has been added in the fourth spot, and it says, whereas by resolution number blank of 2023, the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee approved $436,012 in funding for various projects. And then in the next line, we just changed the name Community Recovery program to Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. So not substantive. The reason for the change in the fourth whereas is just the dollar figure, it's just math.
It's clarity down the road.
Yeah. So, questions or comments about either the changes or the resolution itself? Are we ready to vote then? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. The last item up, two more items. Process for allocating additional funds moving forward. So, we just went through a lengthy process. It literally took us a month to go through all those stages that were necessary to get us to this point. And as everybody so far has said, it went smoothly and everyone seems happy with it. The question is, if more money becomes available in the future, what do we do? Do we go through this process again? Because we know it took a month and that was on the fast track, or do we have something else in mind? Deborah.
Well, I would say that since everyone in the legislature had input into the list that we got, we just moved down the list. I mean, my understanding was the reason we went through the process we just completed was because there were excess funds and there had been an expression of dissatisfaction among some members of the legislature who hadn't participated in our last allocation process, that they felt that their voices weren't heard. Well, now we've heard everyone's voices. We have a priority list. It would seem logical to me that if for some reason the Cuba International is not approved, we just move on down the list.
And there may be others as well, yeah. Travis.
I agree with that. The only thing I would add is the possibility of increasing some of the funds to folks that gave the minimum to, if people wanted to give more. But outside of that, yeah, it's fine.
So we have two ideas here. Let me just, I have a question for each of you. If we're just moving down the list, are we pulling off the minimums? How do we decide how much we're funding?
Oh, my suggestion would just be to move on down the list. Let's see, how far down did we get?
About 20 more unfunded applications.
But I mean, the compiled results list, where's the break off? I'm trying to, it's
The next one down.
Discovery Trail, is that?
No.
Or no, it's
County Chamber
Tompkins.
was next.
Yeah, Chamber.
Yeah, it's Tompkins Chamber.
Then the Enfield Fire Department, and then it went on down the list.
I don't know. I understand your concern, Travis, but that to allocate more over and above what's been allocated would mean that we'd have to go through the process again.
We'll get to Travis's question in a minute. I wanted to ask you, though, if in your proposal,
I would just go,
minimums?
well, however much money is left, however much was allocated in this compiled result.
So for instance, the Tompkins County Chamber, the next one down on the list, has a minimum of $35,000 and a maximum of $215,000. So suppose $50,000 comes available, what do we do?
Oh, I see. So I see. So there isn't a way to take the input from the last spreadsheet and just move down the list with funding based on member selections?
We would be able to do those calculations for the next group. As we get towards the bottom, there are some that maybe only have one or two votes, so we would want to talk about those. But yeah, for the next bunch of them, we could just do the same calculation as what we did for these ones.
Okay, so just to clarify, so in my little scenario there, let's say $50,000 is freed up. What would you do then?
We would take the votes from the legislature that we've already got, and we would calculate the amount for Tompkins Chamber based on those votes. And if it was less than 50,000, we'd go on to Enfield and calculate what the legislature would want to do for that until we ran out of the 50,000, based on the existing input that we have.
Okay, and Veronica had her hand up, but she's nodding. I think she was suggesting that.
Tracy said my thing.
Very good. Shauna.
Thanks for letting me speak. I'm not on the committee. I guess what I'm wondering is if, let's just say a big pot of money became available, let's just say like $1.5 million, I think that would change people's opinions perhaps of what they ranked and how they ranked it, because it would be such a large pot of money. So I would ask if something that large came available, that we do the spreadsheet again.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. If it's what, 50,000 said, let's say Cuba wasn't funded, it was 78,000, then we've done the voting, we could go on down the list. I think that's fair. But if it's a substantial amount of money, I definitely think we should do what we just did over again. And a month wasn't that bad. Especially, how agreeable everybody was. It seemed like a pretty seamless process, so I would be down to do that again.
But only if it was a substantial amount of money. Yeah. That's fair. I hadn't anticipated. I thought we were just planning for what would happen if Danby didn't approve Cuba International.
Well, there definitely may be other projects that fall out. We just don't know yet. Before we go on, I just wanted to check with MRB Group your feelings about this idea of a threshold of money, a larger pot of money. If you had thoughts about that.
My only suggestion is it would just be great if the committee put some definition on that. What is substantial? Is that $500,000 and more, or is it $1 million and more, or is it more than 100,000? I think we should just have some sense of what you mean by substantial.
Well, certainly another $500,000 would be a substantial amount of money. That might be a good.
Yeah, so stand by. We will get to that question. Randy?
I was going to say anything over $250,000, but.
$250,000, okay. What do other committee members think? $250,000, and okay. So I see heads nodding. MRB Group, does that seem like a reasonable-ish number?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
MRB is probably starting to think this is the never-ending story. Sorry.
No problem. We understand there's all the vagaries of life here, so.
Okay, so it sounds like we have general agreement on that. I don't feel like we need to make a formal motion, but if somebody feels like we need to, we certainly can.
I think the only important thing is that when you report out to the full legislature, they understand what the process is going to be going forward. That's worked pretty well so far. I don't think we need a resolution.
Any other thoughts on that?
I agree.
All right. Very agreeable group today. Well, thank you then. Anything else on that issue before we move to the last item? All right. Last item, contracting and spending deadlines. So this is something that we haven't given much thought to yet. MRB Group has started to give a little thought to it, so why don't we hear from them?
Yeah, so these two things, basically we want to protect the funding and protect the county legislature in terms of making sure the funding gets out the door on the ARPA timelines. One thing so there's kind of two aspects to this, the contracting side and the spending side. So on the contracting side, we have these, 6, 7 outstanding contracts right now, and we want to make sure that those are really moving towards execution. So we provided some language that I believe you have in your packet as a recommendation to the committee of kind of setting a deadline for, look, we need to see an executed contract and or substantial progress towards an executed contract by June 30th, or we might consider reallocating that money. Just because we need to make sure that that the money gets out into the community and we're not stalled for a long time in the contracting process. The second side is more on Scott's side. It's the actual disbursement of funds. Ideally, if projects fall through, we would like to have that money reallocated by December 31st, 2024. It is our understanding, based on what we've seen thus far, that you can still reallocate after that point as long as it's originally encumbered or assigned. So wouldn't necessarily be a problem to reallocate after that point, but it just doesn't necessarily give projects a good amount of time to finish by December 2026. So the suggestion from Scott was to kind of have a check-in point as of, I think we decided July 2nd, 2024, making sure that any outstanding projects are where they should be in their timeline. As of right now, there's only 11 projects that have contracts that extend past that date, but they account for a substantial amount of the money, which is not surprising. Bigger projects are going to take longer time. So it's a matter of making sure that these projects are on track and on timeline. So if there is a problem or a stall, we can identify it at that point and have time to go through the process of finding other projects if we need to. So this is just some kind of draft language. The contracting would really apply specifically to the projects that are outstanding right now, not necessarily these new projects, which will probably need a couple of months to get through their process. And then the spending would be for all projects that are approved kind of in the near term. Scott, do you have anything to add on the spending side?
No, I think that covers it. I just think it's important that we're moving the money out the door, and if they're going to go beyond that, but they're still moving forward, that they just need to communicate that with us, and we have some kind of cash flow projection so everybody's covered.
Yep. And so this is just asking for permission to communicate these deadlines and these sentiments to folks.
Thank you. Discussion, Randy.
Yeah, thank you for that information. You answered a lot of questions. Is there a deadline for when we're requiring everybody to submit their contractual information? Was that one of the dates you mentioned?
Yeah, so what we're saying is with these like kind of 7 that are outstanding from the current group, we'd like to have those submitted and executed by June 30th.
Of this year?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Last page on your packet.
Okay, I missed
Have it. No problem. So that, that gave everybody more than 6 months just to sign a contract. That seems pretty reasonable to me. Okay, other discussion? All right, so again, we don't need I don't feel like we need a resolution, but we could if anyone feels like it. Otherwise, we're just giving direction to the consultants to convey that information to all the applicants. Is everybody comfortable with that process? All right. Thank you, MRB Group. Did you get all the feedback you needed to go forward?
Yep.
Thank you.
We're good.
Good. So that is everything on the agenda. Is there any more business to take care of today? Going once, going twice. Okay, we are adjourned. Welcome to the merry month of May again.